Hi, folks. Come on in. I'm just going to get started in a few minutes. I'm going to turn my cam off while we wait another minute or two. For those folks that have just entered, if you could let me know if you can hear and see me in the chat, that would be fantastic. Just want to do an audio and a visual check. Come on in. Thank you. Great name. Thank you, Anthony. We're going to give it a few minutes, let everybody get their technology all squared away. So I'm going to turn my video off for a second. Hi, Julia. Welcome. Hi, Janice. Enoch, welcome. Hi, Samantha. Excellent. I'm still here. I'm going to give it a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. Just because folks can watch this back, it'll be recorded. So. I'll give it one more minute and we'll get started. All right, well, welcome everybody. This is Anthony Rusumano. I'm here live Sunday night. Welcome to our Roadmap to College event, College Planning for 10th Graders. For those that have come on late, they could watch back anything they've missed. So again, thanks for coming tonight. My information or my email is on the board on the board right now, and I'll put it in the chat area as well. But ajrusumano@capoust.org. For those you do not know me, I'm with the Futureology program of Capistrano Unified. We do the college and career planning district-wide. We're not at a particular high school, but we work with all the different high schools and high school students. So if you've seen me before, well, great to see you again. If it's new and Futureology is new, well, we welcome you. I've been doing this for over 20 years, and we like to do these type of events for students and parents to give them information on the path to college and career. So again, thanks for joining us tonight. I will take you through some information about the 10th grade planning. But before we do a little housekeeping and information, again, if you do not know who Futureology is, we do a lot of group workshops either at the high school sites or on web-based events like this one. We also do one-on-one counseling for all the students in the district. We really spend a lot of time with the juniors and seniors, but we're doing more and more for 10th graders and 9th graders. So if you ever want to know anything we're doing, if you go to our website, it's on this slide here, www.CUSD-Futureology.org is our main website. /appointments-events has all our events for the upcoming months. We try to plan out, 2 to 3 months ahead. So if you ever wanted to know anything that we're doing, you could always check that out. And that's where we also do our registration. So that's about our Futureology program. And again, we welcome you for coming tonight. If you haven't seen any of our web events before, also on that same website, futureology.org/locker, you're going to find all our past webinars and a lot of our events we've recorded. So please check that out if you're trying to play catch up in this whole process, or you miss an event and you wanted to watch it. Okay. So tonight I have just a couple objectives for you. And if you haven't used this platform before, some of you already have chatted in to say hello. That's a great place to just say hi, ask some questions, and I'll talk to you about in a second about questions. But tonight is really to give you some timelines and tips as a 10th grader. I really wanted to focus this for 10th graders. Talk about some of the takeaways you can walk away tonight with, as well as what to-dos do you have on your list as a 10th grader. And that's really it. So we're going to wrap it up within the hour. I'll open it up to some questions, and that's the evening. So it's really short and sweet, hopefully, and we can get to a lot. There's a small group tonight, so hopefully I'll get to a lot of your questions. If you do have a question, please chat that in, and then there's a button that you can click on that allows you to mark it as a question. So if you do that, I know you have a question for me. That would be wonderful. And then either I'll answer it at the moment, or I'll wait till I'm covering that section of that portion of the topic that you might be going. So again, I will take those questions throughout the night, and then I'll do a Q&A at the end. So that's kind of the housekeeping. Hello, Leslie, welcome. Glad you have joined us. So again, as we kind of move through tonight, hopefully you'll be asking questions and be an active participant in this process again. So if you have a specific question for you or just a general, just chat that in there. So I'm going to do also a poll tonight. So it's really simple. I know the grade level, it should be 10th graders here, so I'm not going to do that one. But I want to know who you are. Are you a parent or a student? So I'm going to publish this on. If you can answer that for me, I want to see kind of my audience in general, if we're all students, all parents, or anything, or if there's a mixture. It's always great to have both parents and students. Fantastic. Okay, a little bit more parents. That's why I do a lot of these on Sunday nights. Parents tend to have some free time maybe on a Sunday night to attend. So thank you. So that was my first poll. Thank you very much. I'm going to do another poll here, if you wouldn't mind. Now my next question, even though we've got parents and students, I would like to ask you, how confident are you in navigating your college admissions journey? So from very confident to not confident, no confidence at all in this process. And again, it's just the beginning of it, but I just kind of want to know where you're at, where your head's at. So if you can kind of answer that. I got some very confident, so I'm just glad you're joining me, but hopefully I won't scare you off with anything. Okay, so we're all a little mixed. Some people are confident, some not so confident. Okay, and that's great. I'm glad you're taking a step towards gaining more confidence in this process. Part of it is just being more educated, just in general, about the process, about what you want, what your student wants, or if you're the student, what you want in your goals and college goals. And again, Futureology is a resource for you to gain that confidence, and also need to understand what you need to do, and we can help you do that. All right, so thank you for that poll. Awesome. Okay. All right, so I'm going to take you through a bunch of tips that we have, and again, this will be recorded. It will be on Futureology, CUSD-Futureology.org/locker. So if there was something said or you didn't catch something, you can watch it back. You can kind of see the deck and the slides. You'll be able to kind of listen back to it. So again, I'm going to take you through a bunch of stuff. Some of it you're might need more information on. You can go track that down. Again, this is meant to be a starting point to kind of give you that timeline, because a lot of people are always wondering, like, well, what do I need to do and when? And that's the point of tonight's session, okay? So I'm going to take you through a bunch of different tips. And again, here's the first one that I always like to start out with. And just want you to, again, follow along, ask the questions if you have them along the way, if you didn't understand something. Again, I'll be monitoring the chat as we go through it. So in terms of the first one, I always like to tell students and parents, not just parents, to do some type of academic audit on this process. And so understanding, and you may or may not know that, you know, what are the requirements to graduate from a CUSD high school, and making sure you're on track. Now, the students, if you're a parent, are meeting with academic advisors along the way to understand, you know, to be on that track. But I always tell parents and students to just double check, go back and do that audit. The other piece of it, not only just graduating from a CUSD high school, is for certain colleges, we call this an A through G track. And where we're talking about, and here's a sample of, for example, from the UC system, when we talk about A through G, if you've heard that term before, it takes you through a series of courses through your career. Now, to graduate from a CUSD high school, there's certain requirements, like you need to take English and you need to take math. Well, that makes sense. But also for certain colleges, they're not only requirements, but they're also recommendations. So this one I just threw up as a UC school because a lot of students like to apply to UC. So I want to make you understand that when you do your audit, you want to make sure that you're keeping your options open, folks, okay? And when you keep your options open, that makes sure that not only are you kind of have your goal in mind, hey, I want to go to maybe a four-year college, and this particular college, well, they want, as the case in a UC school, for example, 2 years of a laboratory science. They recommend 3. And if you keep on that track, then you'll be in good standing. What you don't want to do is end up being a senior and you go, I never took a language or my second year of language, or I didn't take the 3rd year, which they recommend, and I want to go to UC Irvine. Speaking of UC Irvine, I have to do my plug here. I'm going to just stand up. I'm wearing my UC Irvine shirt because that's where I went, and we made the NCAA basketball tournament. We just got our seedings today. So again, always getting a plug for my alma mater. So with that said, just doing an academic audit is really important. Okay, again, you get to do some meetings with your academic advisors, but that's the first thing on the list. So if you're a parent and you haven't done something like that yet, I would highly suggest doing that. You can look up what A through G requirements are, and I'm not going to spend 30 minutes doing that, but the understanding is you've got to have a mix of your English and your math and your science, and again, it's on the board here. You could watch that back. Typically, my counselors and I through Futureology, we'll kind of walk through and make sure you're on track as well. But we typically don't do that 4-year planning that you might do with your academic advisor. But this is a sample of a document that has both the CUSD requirements. Yes, Jeff, congratulations. Yes, thank you very much. I'm very proud of that. We don't go to the dance that often, so we're excited. And then the requirements for the minimum A through G requirements. So this is a document that actually I'm going to share with you. So I'm going to send you what we call a file share in this. And I'm going to share it now. You can download it to your desktop. Okay, so just download the file that I just sent you, and it's this requirements, and it'll allow you kind of walk through that while you're looking at a transcript. So here's a transcript. And if you haven't seen your kid's transcript in high school, this is what it looks like. The number 1 area here is where you have your grades and your credits. You can also do a credit check to make sure you're on a credit. If you haven't seen a high school transcript, if you're a kid or a parent, go to Aries, download a transcript so you know what's going on, okay? The worst thing is when we meet with the students and they're either credit shorts or they're not doing their A through G requirements, and then they go, I want to go to this school, and you don't have the requirements. So do it now, before the end of the school year, just in case you need to talk to your academic advisor at the school for anything. So, and as you're planning out your courses for next year, making sure you're on that A through G track, okay? So that's the first thing that you should be doing. And when I talk about all the things you have to do, I don't want you to get overwhelmed, okay? We're going to take things, I used to do this when I taught SAT and ACT. I used to say, let's take it in bite-sized pieces or little chunks. We're not going to talk about your college essays now because you don't have to write those for a couple of years. We're not going to be talking about filling out the common application because that's later. What you do and the timing of doing is really important. So the first chunk, again, is this academic audit. In these next 6 months, what should you be doing? And that's what we're going to be talking about, okay? So again, there's a little thing about transcripts and the requirements. You can find this. This is what it required to graduate from CUSD, 220 credits, and what areas you need to do, okay? Now, we require, for example, health. There's a couple things that the UCs don't require. They don't necessarily care about some classes, but we require them for CUSD. You should know the differences, okay? So that's the first one. I'm going to stop that file share, and throughout the night, I'm going to send you a bunch of different files that you can download to your computer that you have some of the information that I'm talking about here, okay? All right, number 2. And if you've heard me before, if you've come to my events, you're going to hear some of the same messages because I feel like a lot of times you have to say it not once, not twice, 3 times, 4 times, till you really ingest it, understand it, and know what we're really talking about. Because a lot of times I'll say things once and a parent thinks they understood me, or a student I think I got it, and they don't really. So saying it multiple times with the most important things is really important, and that's kind of what we do a lot of times with some of our events. But we need to say it over and over again because a lot of our students are making those mistakes. So this one is starting with the end goal in mind, okay? And what I mean by that, and I'm going to show you, it's about the college decision-making paradigm. And here's a little picture of typically what students are doing to come up with maybe the college they want to go to. Here's the little funnel. You see something on TV, or your parents or friends said something, or you read something on the internet, and then all of a sudden you got I have the college I want to go to. I just saw Ohio State and play a football game, and it was a packed stadium, and that looks great. And that's how we get our college. And then we go to the college, and then we pick our major. And so this idea of how we make decisions about how we choose our college is a little flipped. What we need to do is kind of, again, we want to flip this decision-making paradigm to kind of start with it the other way. Instead of starting with the college first, and I'm telling you this now, you go, well, I'm only a sophomore, is because I don't want you to have and go in with colleges. I have my 5 colleges already. I want to start in a different way. So we're going to start in this idea of your goals, what your interests are, and start there. And I can't say this enough because I get a lot of seniors that come in that just came in this fall, and they have schools in mind, but they don't even know why they actually have them on their list. Again, they maybe saw it on TV or friends maybe going there, but they really haven't thought about more into that. So I'm telling you now early on that we really need to find a way to find our interest, what we're wanting a college experience first before we're picking the college. Then the colleges will fill into that based on what we're interested in. Okay, so again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time in there, but I want you to understand before you pick that career, you kind of know what you're interested in. And what you're interested in is what's that educational plan that goes with it. Do I need a trade school? Do I need a 4-year school? What do I need? Am I going down to the military? Like, you don't know your path unless you kind of start with you. Okay, and that's how we want to do this. So the second thing is to start to make this paradigm shift. Okay, and finding out and focusing on yourself. Okay, so that's number 2. The third one, and again, if I'm going too fast or if you have a question on any of this in particular, please ask me a question. You can watch it back. And what I want you to understand is I'm not going to cover every single thing in the specifics of every single thing, because each one of these things are going to require more education. So For the third one, for example, when I talk about self-awareness, okay, when people ask me, hey, Anthony, where should I spend the time? Should I do a couple hours of community services? That's going to put me over the top of getting into college, or what should I be doing? Everybody wants to know, like, what's the most important? And I always rewind it and drop it back to your highest impact hour or two could be spent on you, finding out what you're interested in, what you want. And that's really, again, starting with that paradigm shift. You have to become a self-expert in your understanding yourself. And that's where it starts. So if you know yourself more, you're going to know what you like and what you want in an experience. Okay. And so that's where we want to start. So for example, for this particular one, you go, well, how do I become more self-aware? Well, you got to get involved. You have to potentially take assessments. And when we say assessments, I'll give you an example. So we're going to be doing, and we are doing, if you maybe attended one yourself, I'm going to send you a flyer on it. So here comes a flyer, hopefully. Actually, I don't have it on here. No, I don't have the flyer for an event. We do these Eureka career assessment events for freshmen and sophomores. If you go to our website, you can find out when the next round are, but we do them every month. And so how do you become a self-expert? You start doing some assessments. So it allows us to figure out maybe what we're interested in, how that ties to a potential career. And we're taking into your interests into effect. We might take some of your values into effect, your personality, your skills, your traits. So when we look at you, we want to look at all these factors that not only make up a career, but will make up you. So if your values are about camaraderie, or maybe it's competitiveness, or maybe you're interested in a specific field, or your personality is more shy and quiet, or you don't like big crowds, well, then maybe you don't want a big school. And so finding out who you are and doing some of these assessments, or kind of paying attention to some of these areas, will help you get to a better place. That's what you start with now. So we're not picking our college list now. We can start picking some schools based on some of these factors. Okay, so again, the third thing that I really want you to focus on over the next 6 months are, what are your values? What's your personality about? And parents too. So if I got parents on the call, pay attention to some of these things. Like, what skills do they have? Where are their strengths? What are they interested in? Because that's going to help you find a school that can kind of meet those needs. All right. So when we talk about it, and you've probably heard me say this, I said this I did a parent boot camp last week, and finding your purpose, where not only it combines what you're good at, but what you love doing, what the world needs, but what also you can get paid for it. That's kind of finding the sweet spot of it all. And so when you find that sweet spot, that's going to be, not everybody can right away. It might take some time. I'm still looking for that sweet spot of everything. And I feel with this job, I get to do a lot of these things, what I love doing, what I'm good at. A lot of my values are here. So what is your purpose? And you don't necessarily need to know that now, but you need to start asking those questions, such as, what am I interested in? What do I want in an experience? So again, for parents on the call, it is really important to kind of start asking those questions. For students, you need to ask yourself those questions. So that was number 3. I highly recommend our Eureka workshops if you haven't been there yet. It's a starting point. Our Eureka workshops are only an hour and a half. We're meeting with 9th and 10th graders to start the assessment process, so you understand what it looks like and take you through some simple assessments. There will be more to be done over time. So over the next 6 months, for sure, over the next couple of years, you should be looking into that. What you don't want to do is end up senior year and you go, I don't know what I want to do, and I haven't even thought about it, because then you're picking schools and you don't know if those schools can meet those needs, okay? So before I move on to the 4th thing, but one thing I want to tell you, for example, if you find out, for example, that you're all about kindness and generosity and teamwork, like those are core to you, who you are, well, you might not end up picking schools like Cornell or Princeton or Harvard or Georgetown, where maybe they're super competitive and you might not thrive there. So that's just a simple example of when you're going through these assessments and finding out who more of you are, then your school list will change based on that, because some schools are more one way or another, or they have some things that don't have other things. And if it's not meeting those needs and those goals for you, you might not be happy there, or what I say, you won't thrive there. You might do fine there, but you won't thrive. Okay. All right. So again, questions, keep them coming in. Feel free to ask them in there. All right. Number 4. This one I will say till I'm blue in the face. Andy, you're going to say, "Oh, Anthony, I've heard you say this millions of times." Yeah, and we're still making mistakes on this. I have juniors now that haven't even done something like this. So let's take a practice SAT and ACT. Okay, so for those sophomores, now is that a really great time to do that, and I'll tell you why. Okay. And I want to see if I have that flyer. Okay, I have a flyer that I'm going to share. Now I have this flyer. I'm going to share it with you. And it's a mock testing flyer. So if you haven't seen those, we're doing some practice SAT and AC testing coming into the district at all your high schools. We did this in the fall. You might have participated, you might not. But the next action item for sophomores is to take a practice test in both areas. And what it allows you to do is to compare that baseline of both exams. And what you're going to end up with is a path. It's either going to be the SAT or the ACT. So for example, if you scored a 1200 on your SAT practice and you scored a 29 on your ACT practice, when we compare the score, it's in the red. If you see that star on the screen, it's in the red. That means you're favoring the ACT. That's the test you should move forward with. You shouldn't look back because, one, you don't have the time and the energy, the money, all that. And colleges don't care which one you take. They're universally accepted, either one, at all these colleges, different than back in my day. So it's really important to put your best foot forward and to save yourself some time. So right now, using these data points of a practice test on both allows us to have a decision in hand. And what it does is it prevents us from taking more time or dragging something out. So if you fall in the blue, you want to favor the SAT. If you fall in this gray judgment area line, then you don't take both. You make a choice. Which one did I prefer better? Did I like this one or that one? And then you make that call and you move forward with it. I will say this again till I'm blue in the face, because people keep going, well, I did what you said, but then I went back to the other one because I fell in the gray area. The kids don't have the time, if you're a parent these days, to go back and forth. Students, you don't have the time to try both. There's no benefit to doing it. You're just wasting your time and spinning your wheels. Focus on one. That laser focus on one allows you to get a better score ultimately. And if you do this now as a sophomore, you're going to be ahead of that. These mock tests are for well, they're not for 12th graders. These mock tests are mainly for sophomores. Juniors should be already on the path. So, Julie, I don't know what grade you're in, but if you're a 9th grader, I only recommend it if you were in advanced math and you've had algebra and geometry. So you can take that. But if you're a 9th grader and you haven't had geometry or you haven't had algebra, I wouldn't take it. It's a little early. Okay, again, wait for the time to come to do some of these things. Sometimes things are too early, even though you're stressing about it, but there's no point doing things too early. There's timing for everything. So for my sophomores, if you've completed algebra and geometry, you should take these practice tests now. So by the end of sophomore year, you have your chosen path. And then in the summer, you have a choice to make. And I'll talk a little bit about it, but you can make the choice to prep over the summer and get ready for the tests. Take them early, right before as you're starting junior year. What it allows you to do is get ahead of the game, and 2, not have to compete with all your classes you're going to take junior year. One of the big things a lot of juniors make, the mistake sometimes, is they wait till spring of junior year, so a year from now, If you're a junior and you haven't done it, then you're trying to compete with any AP classes. It gets really busy, so you don't have any time to put into your SAT or ACT. So if you do those practice tests now, you have a choice. You have an SAT or an ACT. You don't do both, and you can actually literally sit for the test this summer and prepare for it. Okay, so that's a big timing thing that a lot of kids get wrong. There's even seniors that are taking it in the fall of senior year when they should be applying. So the biggest thing, if you don't get anything out of this call except take the SAT or the ACT, do my practice testing now, and I might actually sit for the test this summer and prepare for it. I'll quickly go through the tests, but I won't spend a ton of time on it because you can look all this up. They are a little different tests, but the identical in the same idea that there's reading and math. Are the mock tests, question from Mark, are the mock tests different exams or the same exam on that flyer you posted? I'm not sure I understand your question, Mark. The mock tests are a practice SAT and a practice ACT. They're at all those locations. So if you're going to take a practice SAT, you can't do an SAT and an ACT at one location in one sitting. You don't have enough time. You'll have to take a practice SAT at one location and a practice SAT, ACT on a different location. So I'm not sure what your question is, but if you can clarify that, but that's what you're doing with those. Now, one of the differences between an SAT or an ACT is the time that you have. So the students that are actually going to take the test, you'll see there's a time difference about how much time you have per section. Okay, parents, it's again, you can see it on the screen. I'm not going to go too far into it because I want the kids trying, students, I want you taking both practice exams and seeing which ones are going to be better for you. Now, if you've taken a practice exam in the fall, like an SAT, then do the other one this spring. If you took the PSAT this fall and you want to save yourself some time, then take the practice ACT. But even if you took the PSAT this fall, if you have the time, I would say take the practice SAT and the practice ACT, because when you take them a week apart, it's more, you're mixing apples and apples. You're more of a comparison. Okay. Oh, no. Well, Mark, no. Don't take an SAT on each date. It's the same test, first of all. You don't need two practice SATs. If you have a practice SAT score, folks, again, another mistake a lot of people make is, I'm going to take a practice SAT on this Saturday and take one the following Saturday because I want to do better on it. That's not the point of these tests. The point is to find out, am I better at the SAT or the ACT? And if it's the same test, you're seeing the same questions, of course you're going to do better. Even if it was a different test, I wouldn't recommend doing a second test a week later or 2 weeks later because you didn't prepare for it. You're going to get a very similar score, number one. Number two is you need to prep for it. If after the practice test, the next thing you're going to do, and I'm going to get to it, is to create a preparation plan. So if you get 1,000 on the SAT, and we'll talk about it in a second, here's the scoring. So an SAT goes up to 1,600 and an ACT goes to 36. You need to set a goal. So there's no point in taking multiple practice tests and trying to get scores. The idea is you take multiple practice tests when you're actually in preparation mode. So for example, if you're going to take the September ACT, well, you backtrack a couple months, and let's say you're starting your preparation in July, you'll take over from July till September, you'll take 5, say, practice ACTs. That's when you're doing it. You're not taking one now and one a week later just to see how you do. Once you have that first one, you know how you did. Now you make the plan. Hopefully that makes sense for everybody. Okay. Now, the fact that you folks are here on the call, you won't make the same mistakes a lot of students are making, which is maybe they take multiple practice tests. Well, you don't have that much time. Take one, and that's all you need. The other difference on these tests is the ACT is less forgiving in time. The SAT is a little bit more time forgiving. You have more time per question on the SAT. So some people like the SAT better for that. But again, if you have test scores for both, we can determine what you're better at. So again, I just wanted to take you through some of the differences. Okay, we're going to shift over now to the sixth thing that I want to make sure, and we've been talking a little bit about, is do you prep or don't you prep? Like, what's the decision process about prepping for it. So it's kind of what Mark talking about, like, oh, should I take multiple tests? How do I come up with a prep plan? So one thing is you could always meet with the futurology counselors. We're always willing to help students come up with your best prep plan after you have 2 practice test scores, because then we can give you more advice, as opposed to you don't even know what you're scoring. Well, we can't help you as much. So the more specific we can get, the better. You need to understand, though, one size doesn't fit all in the preparation world. Okay, what might work for one kid might not work for another kid. What another kid's goal is might be different than your kid's goal. Or if you're the student, your goal is different than your friend Jenny's goal. If Jenny wants 300 points, but you only want 100 points, you're going to have different prep programs, or you're going to have a different prep plan. Okay, so part of it, and when you're deciding what you need to do after you have, I'm going to do a little. Let's see if I can get, I'm going to draw something on the board. So let's just say you took a practice test and you're at, let's say, I'm going to circle this, say 1170 or something. I'm kind of circling here on the board now. You took a practice test. That's what you scored on an SAT. You scored an ACT. Let's say you scored a 21. So you're better at the SAT. So that's the one we're going to stick with. Okay, so we're sticking with the SAT. So now the next question comes is, what score do I need based on some of the schools that maybe I've thought about, that might be on my list, that I've considered? Now, again, I don't want you just throwing any schools on there. You want to make sure that they have some of the things you want. But let's just say now you had, well, I'll just pick UCI out of there just because I'm wearing it. But you're going to probably need to be in somewhere in this range here. Okay, so this gap is quite large. So 2 things are going to happen. Is you go, well, if you don't do anything and then you go take it for real, your score is not going to change much. So you have a decision to make. Do I want to put the time and energy into this or not? And that's up to you. It's a family decision. Parents, I warn you, you can pay $1,000 for a class, or $3,000 for a tutor, or $500 for an online class, whatever it may be. If the kid's not willing to do the work, the score is not going to go up. Students, the same thing. If you're not motivated to do it, there's no point putting it on the calendar or scheduling it, going down there if you're not really going to do anything about it. So once you have that practice test score or that baseline score, the idea is to set your goal. And if that goal is going up 200 to 300 points, as the case here, let's say, that gap is going to dictate to you what needs to be done. If it's 50 points, it's not a big jump. If it's a couple hundred points, it's going to take a couple months. It's going to take multiple practice tests. So Mark, you said, should I take multiple practice tests? No, once I have this 1170 and this 21, I know which test. Now the idea is, if I'm going to prep for it, so that's why the summer is a great time. You'll probably need, this student, let's say they needed to jump up those couple hundred points. You're going to probably need 2 to 3 months of that summer. You're going to need to take a class that's, or study on your own a lot of hours. I know I can't study on my own. I would prefer a class where you might need 10 to 20 hours of class, 3 to 5 practice tests to hit that goal. And if you're not willing to do that, then you're not going to see your score jump. That's where another mistake students make. They think, well, I'll take the 1-day class at San Clemente. That only works if you only want 20 points. But if you want hundreds of points, a 1-day class, when you cram it in on 1 day, is not going to do the trick. So again, part of it is understanding what your goal is and where you fit. And part of it is understanding the not requirements, but what schools are looking for in an applicant. So again, I have some schools on this board, but you can look up a school and find out what their averages are in terms of test scores, as well as GPA. A lot of students in our district tend to have the GPAs in the range, but their test scores are not. And they think the schools will go, oh, we don't care about their test score. And that's not true. So again, you have to make sure you're in that range of that school. Otherwise, it's going to be really difficult to get in. Okay. So defining your goal score is part of that determining of what that prep is going to look like. Okay. The other piece of the prep part is finding out the best time to really sit for that exam. Okay, so on the board here, we have a couple different timelines. We have one that, somebody who's in band or somebody who's an athlete. Everybody's going to have a different timeline. The one where I'm talking about, maybe testing in the summer, okay, is one where it is what we call more of an accelerated timeline. Okay, that's accelerated because you're starting it earlier than typical. Okay, because you probably hear a lot of juniors who take it spring of junior year. Well, I like the early track for those students who've had enough math, which are typically algebra and geometry. They're a little bit more advanced in their classes. They kind of know they want to go to a four-year school, and starting and they're going to have a very hefty or a pretty busy junior year to consider the accelerated or early track to prep over the summer and get ready for the exam over the summer. Okay, that allows you to be away from your school classes and have the focus of getting ready for it. It's harder during the school year. So the accelerated track is one where you're actually going to sit for either an August SAT or a September ACT. I like that. If you're not sure if you should be on that track, you could always check in, shoot me an email, or meet with myself or my counselors, and we can talk about it. But a lot of times, it's really depending on the classes you have, when you have the most time. But the key is, when are you going to have the time to put in to bump up your score if you want to bump it up? Okay, you got to determine. If you only need 10 points, heck, you get a book or something, read through it really quickly, and then go sit for the exam. You don't need to spend all summer long doing that. The traditional is where, maybe you're not really sure where you want to go. You haven't had some of that math. Maybe you haven't had geometry till next year. You're falling behind in school, so school's got to be really a priority. So you maybe take it a little bit later in junior year. You don't take it in the fall. That's okay as well. But again, then prep becomes hard because then you have to do something in January, February, March. And if you're busy then, it's going to be really difficult. So if you're in a sport or in an activity, when is that ebbs and flows? When is that roller coaster? So when are you not competing or in the midst of a lot of commitment and you can put the time in is really important. So a lot of students make the mistake of, I'm going to do all of it at once, and something loses. Either your grades aren't as good, your test scores aren't as good, because you can't do it all. So timing becomes really important. Okay. All right. So here are all the test dates. So again, like I said, there's an August SAT and a September ACT. There's also an October ACT and an October SAT. So for those accelerated tracks, that's a good time frame. If you're more, what we call traditional, you might be taking the February ACT and maybe the March SAT, which is okay. But the key is going to be, if you're going to plan on prepping, when are you going to have the most time to put in the time and the energy? That's a really big key. Okay. All right. So I mentioned some of these tips about testing. Best times in your schedule. I always tell students, avoid premature testing. What I mean by that, don't take the official SAT or ACT just for fun to see how you do. That's what these practice tests are. Okay. So avoid that, because you don't want to put it on your record. When you take it through the College Board or ACT, you put it on your record. So make sure you're ready for that. Okay. And I tell students, the magic number is really, in my mind, 2. Shouldn't take it more than 3 times for sure. But I tell students, prep for 1. So if you're going to take the 1 for real, prep for it and make sure you're ready for it. Plan for 2 and leave time for 3. Okay. So if you start early your junior year, so the summer, fall of junior year, that allows you to take it once then, maybe a second time in the fall, and a third time in the spring, and you're done with it. So by the time you're a senior, you have your GPA, you have your test score. All you're doing is actually filling out applications. Okay, that's the best timing. And so if you're all my sophomores here, there's no reason why you shouldn't fall into that cycle. Okay, and retake it only if it's really going to make a difference. I have some kids that I got a 34. Great, you're done. What do you need a 35 for? You don't. Okay. retake it if and only if it's really going to make a difference. So yeah, if you're at a 27 and you're trying to get to a certain school and you need to break 30, sure, retake it. But only retake it if you're going to put the time in to get a 30, which might be another couple months of preparation. So you have to plan accordingly, right? And those are some of my pro planning tips for that. Claire, is the practice test the same test as the actual SAT? Well, it's not the actual SAT or ACT, but it is a College Board version of the SAT and the ACT version of an ACT. So it's a pre-release test by them that we, or our partner Revolution Prep is delivering to us, and we're scoring. So it's not the real one in the sense that it goes on your record or anything, but it's just like that one. So good question, Claire. So it's whatever score you get on that, it would be a good assumption that that's what you would got on the real one. Okay. All right. So set realistic expectations. Okay, this one is something where I want to tell you now. So when I get to counsel you, only the famous colleges are worth attending. I know it's tough for a lot of people. Like, if I don't go to USC, as I don't know if you saw the news lately, like for some of these people that are in this scandal going on, like if they're not going to USC, then they've failed miserably. And obviously they paid an arm and a leg to make that happen, and now they're in trouble because they felt like that's what had to happen, and that's not true. So we got to reject that notion. Otherwise we get into trouble and we do irrational things. You know, yes, the process of applying to college can be competitive, okay? But it's competitive only for, a select 40 to 50 schools. Beyond that, there's great schools out there. We have a great opportunity to look beyond what we call these brand name colleges and universities, okay? And those have nothing to do with a student's worthiness or their talent or achievement, okay? Everything has to do with the student themselves. So my students on the call, I know it's really easy to gravitate to some of these more famous schools, but there's so many great schools out there, thousands of them that you guys can get into, okay, that aren't maybe the name brands, but they'll give you what you want, okay? So when we set these realistic expectations, we have to make sure that we're looking at things such as what their grades and their test scores, or what I call their academic criteria. So things such as when you profile a school, you need to look at how many people apply, how many are admitted. And so that's called acceptance rate. We have to look at what are their average GPAs and test scores of the accepted students, so you know the range. Okay, so you really have to start reviewing the profile. So I'm telling you now just to set the realistic expectations. You don't have to start looking at their profiles yet, but the idea of the expectation, the reality of it, if you look on my board, you can't hear me? My video, sorry, try refreshing, guys. Can you hear me now? We'll do a pause here. Yeah, click reconnect, people. Sometimes that happens with this platform. All right, good. I'm back. Thanks, Jeff. All right, for those that missed me for a second, what I was getting to was the idea that we have to be realistic, great, Janice, about where we're picking schools, okay? So if we look at this slide here, I'm going to really quickly go through it. There's approximately almost 40,000 high schools in the country. That means there's almost 40,000 valedictorians and salutatorians, the top couple in their class. And there's almost 40,000 senior class presidents. Well, some of these schools only accept, especially at the top schools, the Ivy Leagues accept under 2,000 people. So that means the other 38,000 valedictorians aren't getting into those schools. The reality of it all is there's so many great applicants out there. It doesn't mean that you wouldn't succeed at some of these schools. There's just too many applications. It's just sometimes a random draw of it. Or, as I like to tell students, sometimes it ends up being more than just your grades and your test scores at some of these schools. It ends up being more about you and these other things. And that's why I say it's got to be more than you're more than a test score. Okay, so if you have a 34, you have the score to get in somewhere. Now do other things that are going to make you a great candidate. Okay, so again, we have to be realistic in this process. We did this the other night, show you really quickly that the bigger piece of this pie is most schools accept most people. Okay, more than half of the applicants. It's just these small slivers that are accepting students under 20% or under 35%. Okay, and that's what those small slivers are. So again, part of this process, and when we talk about it with our workshops that we do, we also do what we call a college list jumpstart that we do for all juniors, that we come to your high schools, where we help you pick schools that match your profile and then match what you want your experience to be. So we help you create a list starting in junior year, and we help you learn how to do the research and how to put schools on your list. So parents, now we don't have to worry about it so much, but what I'm telling you, and students, what I'm telling you is just being realistic about it. So don't be picking schools, oh, they accept 10% of the people, and that's the school I have to have on my list. Let's start with you, what you're interested in, before we start putting the schools down, okay? So, all right. The eighth thing that I wanted to touch on were about doing research on these schools, and what I call is best fit research. You need to know not just if it's a good school, I know it's a good school. No, you need to find out about it academically, socially, financially, especially for you parents. Students, you're going, well, I don't think about that. My parents and students, you should have that conversation. As well as career services. You should be looking at from 4 different areas to determine if a school should make it on your list, ultimately. So now, these next 6 months aren't determining your final school list. It's just starting to put a list together. Who would make it on my list and why? And so this best fit research, okay, and here's some schools, here's some California schools and a whole bunch of them. I always like to put, all the UCs and stuff. These are a lot of the schools a lot of kids in the area put on. But what I want you to understand is when you start doing your homework or start doing a college list, you have to kind of get an idea of what you want from a college. Okay, so academically, do I want to be challenged but not overwhelmed? Where will I get the best grades? Or how is the learning environment that fits my style? How hard do I want to work academically? Those are academic factors. Or from the social factors, do I want, where will I fit in? Where am I going to make a lot of friends? Do most students live on campus? That was important for me when I went to UCI because I moved from New Jersey. One of the things that I wanted to have at, here we go, at my UCI was that a lot of students did live on campus because I was moving from New Jersey. It is a lot of students that commute too, but there was a lot of students that lived on campus. That was important for me coming from across the country, and they had that. So that was very important. And that first year students, they had housing for them, and that was great. So again, what kind of things are important to you to make sure that you have from a career or support services? Do they help me explore either graduate school or find a job? Do they have job placements? What's their job placement rate? How many years do people graduate in? Do they help me with employability skills? So again, what is important to you and your family? What kind of merit-based scholarships do I have? What is the total cost of attendance? So a lot of these things might go on your list. Anthony wants to know, when should one construct a list of schools? Well, it's going to be an ongoing process, Anthony. What I like to tell students is you can start slowly putting a list together with schools on your list, but first you need to find out what we call your interests or defining your experience. What do you want it to be? So before you construct a list, what I would say is define your experience first. What do you want out of a school? And again, some of those academic factors, financial and stuff like that. So, down here, do you want to paint your face like one of these Dukies? The Duke Blue Devils were the #1 seed overall in the tournament? Do you want to go to Cameron Indoor Stadium and paint your face, or go to a Georgia game and, you know, be one of the D or the A? Or do you want to have a school that has a lot of study abroad? Like, I don't know what's important for you. But once you have that, Anthony, I think you can start constructing a list. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So that's what I first do, is define your experience, find out who you are, what you're interested in, to start coming up with some schools. Otherwise, you're just picking schools and you don't know if they're going to meet that. So for my juniors, I usually tell my juniors that they should have a preliminary list by spring of junior year, and before the end of junior, at least a preliminary list. For my sophomores, it really depends. If you know a little bit more about what you want, you might have a list by this summer. And it might be really big, and you're slowly kind of knocking things off of it, and you're kind of formalizing it. So again, defining that experience is really important. So again, when we come up with a list, ultimately, you want to make sure all the schools on your list, you're in love with those schools, and you're not just putting a school on there. And you have to do your homework, okay? And ultimately, this last one here is use a college search tool. So Anthony and everybody on this call, and we'll talk about it in other workshops, to use a college search tool like Big Future or College Raptor. So once you have your criteria or what you're interested in, you can use a college search tool. But again, this isn't a workshop where I'm going to show you college search tool. It's just to kind of get you an idea of what are the things you need to be putting on your list and doing. But we have workshops. We do the College Jumpstart as juniors, where we show you how to use those search tools. So when you have your criteria, you put it in, and it filters out some colleges based on, hey, I want a school where I live on campus that's urban, that is, or it's a college town and it has a football team. So, all right, moving on. But before for the 10th thing, Mark wants to know, is it okay for Accelerated to take ACT in September of junior year? Yeah, no, that's the idea. An accelerated timeline, Mark, is somebody who actually takes the ACT in September or the SAT in August. That means you're prepping over the summer leading up to that September test date. So yes, that's the idea of the accelerated. So yes, we want you to do it. So you take it for the first time for real in September if your ACT is the path. If it's SAT, you take it in August most likely. Okay, unless you're going away or something, maybe then it's October. All right, great question. All right, the 10th thing is talking about finding a release. For parents, for students, this is really important, because nowadays I feel like, even, you know, I have 2 boys myself, there is so many, we're so scheduled right now that we get stuck. Either you're studying, you're hitting the books too much, and there's just no time. We don't give ourselves the time to be able to find a release between all the studying and all the things that we do, okay? So you need to find a way to, whether it's doing a hobby of your own or finding an activity that you truly love, whatever it is, you have to find a way to give yourself a break, okay? It is empowering. Parents, it's empowering for the students to have some time to find that release, whatever it may be. I don't care what it is something that they do. Lori, the flyer that I sent around, there's a practice SAT and ACT coming in March and April at all the schools, at all the high schools. So again, you can go on our website at CUSD-Futureology.org/appointments-events, and you'll see all so it's a practice SAT and a practice ACT. You take one or the other. Then you go to another location and you do the other test, okay? So again, back to finding the release. You need to do that. So my sophomores now, it's not about doing your essays and doing all this other stuff. You know, take those practice tests, doing some assessments, finding what you're interested in, and finding the release. The release might be an extracurricular activity as well. You might like to go to the gym. You got to find something in there. I tell a lot of teenagers too to, you know, invest in NTAs, non-teen activities, where maybe you're working for a small startup, or you're going to the community center and teaching folks how to use technology, because technology is your thing, if you like to do that. Or you're just getting a release from stress and you like to go play basketball at the park or whatever it may be. Find some of those things. This also ties into finding an activity. Brian, that is not, so Brian's asked, we're back still, and again, this is what gets people the most anxious. Brian, you've heard, and I don't know who you heard it from, but no, that's not true. Either test, it's not accurate. So again, I'll reiterate, choose the SAT or the ACT, whichever one is your strength. If there is no strength, then your preference, and move forward with that. If you don't follow that, you'll be more stressed, you'll waste more time, and you'll end up doing more things and spending more money than you have to. Okay, so, all right. In terms of activities, finding release, some things that I like to tell people is there's a way, and schools will look at it, especially smaller private schools, maybe the large public universities, not as much, where they maybe don't look at much as extracurriculars, but the smaller private schools where you do your essays, and there's a way to talk about impact. It doesn't matter what your GPA is. You can make an impact in a lot of different ways, okay? So, do an activity inventory. So not only do a academic inventory or audit, do an activity audit. Are you doing things you really enjoy? It should be quality over quantity. So for my sophomores, are there things you're doing now because you think you have to do them for college? Then that's probably bad. That shouldn't be on your list. Are you doing the things you really enjoy? Are you making impact? So find that, do that activity inventory now. And if you're choosing or you're doing things like you're doing community service and it's not your thing and you're not really invested in it and you're really just going through the motions, then you shouldn't be doing community service. You're not really getting anything out of it. Do the inventory and then make some changes for the summer and for next year to make sure you're doing things that are for you, either a release where you're making an impact, you're feeling good about it, you feel like it's a strength of yours, all those things. It's not about being the most well-rounded anymore. It's about finding your niche, being what we call pointy, in the sense that you have something or a couple things that you're committed to, and that expresses your uniqueness. That's important. So for my sophomores now, that's what you want to be looking at. For parents, same thing. If you're making them do something that you think the colleges want, that's probably a bad approach. Now, if they like doing that, that's a different thing. If they're getting something out of it, it's a different thing. Okay. All right. Number 11, summer planning. Okay. So when we talk about summer planning, you can start thinking about that now. What are you going to do this summer? Okay. That's, people go, well, Anthony, what's the most impressive thing? I'm not going to do a poll, but what's the most impressive thing to be doing in the summer? Well, there's so many things that can be equally impressive. You might be working all summer and you'd be like, well, I didn't do anything. Well, that could be a lot. You can learn a lot about working, about employability skills or things or customer service, anything like that. Or maybe somebody went and they did a robotics camp. That could be impressive too. It's going to be different for everybody. There shouldn't be any pressure to make sure that your strategy improves their chance of admission. It should be improving them. Forget the admission part of it. So, it might be that he likes taking classes. Okay, well, then take some classes at Saddleback. Or he likes tutoring kids. All right, then do that. You don't have to spend a ton of money for an expensive summer program to make it impressive. Okay, so again, as you plan for the summer, there's really no right or wrong way, but what you should be thinking about is, again, for one thing, we talked about the SAT or ACT, knocking that out if you can, number one. And number two is taking the reins, creating your summer experience that is going to be fruitful for you. Also, rejuvenates you. So you're ready for next year too. And maybe you go 2 weeks backpacking, or you do some job shadowing. Again, I don't know what you're interested, but tie that in there. Okay. All right. we are coming to a little bit over an hour, so I'm not going to go through that. Number 12, getting some face time with your counselor, advisors, your guidance team at school, really important. You want to make sure you do that. They should be doing some planning for next school year coming up, so make sure you take advantage of that and you get that time in for sure. The other thing you can be doing now, and again, in bite-sized pieces, and Anthony, you're like, oh, should I make my college list now? You don't have to. I'm going to send a flyer around now about an event we have coming up in a few weeks, which I think would be really great. It's the mock case study. If you haven't signed up for it, I think you should. And after the mock case study, so I just shared it, we're doing a college fair for out-of-state schools. There's going to be about almost 40 schools, University of Oregon, New Mexico, Oregon State, Alabama, a bunch of different schools. This is a great time to meet and greet reps, start visits, and start talking to colleges and asking them those questions that are important to you. If the library or the tutoring service are important to you, you should ask about that. If it's class size, well, what's this teacher to student ratio? If it's about scholarships, ask about that. So it's time now to start doing that. But there should be no pressure. I'm still here. There should be no pressure to have to visit every school. There should be no pressure to make sure that you put 10 schools on your list. It should be, what am I interested in, and start figuring that out. So meeting and greeting a lot of schools is really important. The other thing you can do now is just start showing some curiosity for what you want to study. And it doesn't have to be in school. And that's where a lot of students make mistakes, is like, it has to be a class in school. No. Schools really want to see, do you choose to learn when you're not made to learn? Meaning that, like, you're taking a class this summer or outside the school schedule, whether it's a CCA class or a Saddleback class or something with technical skills, or it's something for a trade, or you're learning Photoshop or coding or whatever it may be, or you're working at the local hospital, or you're learning something there, or you did a certification program, whatever it may be. Do that and start thinking about how you can do that. That goes much longer way in admissions than you might think, but don't make it up. Again, find out that thing that interests you and then take it to the next level. Okay. We won't go over this just because we're running out of time, but the idea is just getting some more employability skills. Okay. And the last piece of it is just, as we mentioned, timing is so huge in this whole process. From your testing plan, when you sit for the SAT and ACT, and if you have time to prep for it, we're not there yet, and we'll have more workshops on it, but even things like starting your essays this summer. So not this summer, but the following summer is working on your college essays when it's your summer before your senior year, as opposed to waiting till October, November of your senior year. So timing is going to be everything. And if you can follow along and do things at the appropriate timing, not too early, not too late, you're going to be on a great track. Okay. I'm going to send you a 10th grade checklist. So it's coming now. I'm sharing that file. So it kind of gives you some timing of things that you should be doing this year. We talked about a bunch of them right now. So make sure you, again, take them in chunks. We're not thinking about, I need to finalize my college list now, or I need to write my essay. There's certain things you got to work on yourself, what you're interested in. You need to check into some of the activities you're doing and make sure it meets your needs. And that practice test is a really big one. So here's a little mini timeline of things that are happening throughout your freshman to senior year. But that timeline I just sent you kind of just focuses on 10th grade. We have one for 11th grade. We have one for senior year. They're on our website. You can download those. Where do I have it? Nope, I didn't have a slide on that. So you can download it on our website. Nope, I don't have our website there either. Silly me. www.CUSD-Futureology.org/forms. It's called our resource library if you go to our website. but it's /forms. And it's going to have the checklists under the academic and planning piece for junior year, senior year as well. So again, it gives you a timing of everything. Okay. I'm going to stop file sharing this one. I'm going to send you a flyer on standing out because I didn't cover that in this session there. So it's just about standing out, things you can do to stand out. So I'm going to wrap this up and then open up to some more questions. But what I want you guys to understand is this process should be fulfilling for you. Okay. It's got to meet your needs and goals. I tell that probably every workshop that I have. What are your needs and goals? Okay. That's the most important. Don't be doing it that's because someone else is doing something. Oh, I'm applying to that school because someone else is doing it. Or I'm taking the ACT and the SAT because my friend is doing that. No, you don't need to be doing that. It's got to meet your needs and goals. HIP is high impact player. Again, I don't care if your GPA is 3.0. You go, well, I'm never getting into UC. Forget that. Be a high impact player. You're going to get into a good school. Take all those things, use those to your advantage, and put in the effort because that's the great equalizer. Okay, so put in the effort, especially in this process. A lot of these things I talked about, research on your schools, taking an assessment, taking a practice SAT and ACT, that's all effort. If you do those things, this process will be more manageable. It'll be more enjoyable. You'll be on the right track. And when you become a senior and you actually have to apply, it won't be overwhelming like it was for a lot of these seniors that I saw this fall because they didn't take care of all those things along the way. Okay. Again, take them in bite-sized pieces. Now, these next bunch of months, I'm going to do practice testing. I'm going to determine my tests. I'm going to create a prep plan. And I'm going to find out more about me and what I'm interested in. Okay. So with that said, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm just going to open it up to some questions that you have. Thank you for staying on for the full hour and kind of staying engaged with me. This is one of many workshops to get educated. There'll be more on different topics. There's things we do on careers. There's things we do on planning, things we do on essays and college listing and different things. So you should attend some of those. This was just a general planning initial session. So Jeff, sort of rule, how many AP classes colleges will accept? Yes, Carrie, the webinar was recorded. You can watch it. All our webinars, if you go to our website under the tab that's called Locker, all our webinars will be. And I'll send an email out to everybody who registered for this with that telling you it's up and it's ready. So back to Jeff's question, because it's kind of a big one. Sort of rule of how many AP classes college. Is every college essentially different, or is it a good basic sense of thinking tons of APs may not really benefit our students? Okay, so Jeff's asking a question about APs, and I love these kinds of questions because it's kind of like, well, if I told you that's what they need to do, then you'll do it for college admission. That's not what I want you to do. It's like, one, first of all, could they balance a lot of AP classes? If they can and manage it and be healthy and thrive, then no problem. But every college will be a little different. Yeah, UC only accepts 8 semesters of the credit, but for some schools, it depends on the level of school, Jeff, that the more competitive schools, even if they don't look at more than 8 or 10, wherever school you're applying to, it still looks good for rigor because schools look at the rigor. So they still will look at the classes you took. So again, it depends on your goals. If you're looking to get into a competitive school and you didn't show any rigor and you only took 6 AP classes because you're like, that's not going to benefit me because it doesn't go into my GPA calculation, and you're trying to get into a very competitive select school, they're going to be going, well, they didn't take enough rigor in my class. So the rule is, in my mind, the rule is take what you can handle that keeps you engaged and doing, like, I wouldn't take an AP class of a class that they hated over another class that they were interested in, because I had a parent just email me last week. Kid wants to do psychology as opposed to another year of math. But they go, well, will I not now get into my UCLA because I'm not going to do that? Well, it was going to be an AP psychology class anyway. So it was, well, no, if the kid loves psychology, then do that one. So the rule of thumb, you should be following a balance rule of what can you do to keep that balance, that you can do all the things you want to do and not stress out and struggle with them. Like you're staying up every night till 3 a.m. doing AP homework. Well, then something's amiss on that you probably can't manage that very well because you're not getting enough sleep. You can't do anything else. So again, I wouldn't be looking at how many will schools accept. I would be looking at what can you handle. And again, if you want to apply to more competitive schools, they're looking at that rigor. So again, with that, I would be taking classes that you're interested of rigor, that, oh, I like history better than chemistry. Well, then take the AP history class as opposed to AP chem. And take the 3 classes you can manage that you like, and the other 2 APs don't do those, and take a regular class. So again, it's all about balance. All right, other questions, but that was a very good one. And something you got to keep checking in with your student, or if it's you, to make sure that you're on track for that. And I wouldn't be using, hey, I'm applying to UCLA, I'm going to use that as my default. Well, if you can't handle that, then it's not going to help you that you then have a, you're failing out of a class because you can't handle it. Then it does you no good. Other questions? You got it. Great. You're welcome, Jeff. Thanks, Luke. Thank you, Carrie. I hope your son watches it. Well, we hit 1 hour and 15, which is the exact perfect time that I said I wanted to finish this off. So thank you again, everybody. My email is on the board. So if you want to follow up with me specifically, maybe a specific question you have. Oh, Dawson, another question of APs to take for competitive colleges account for senior. Well, they don't look at you. You don't get senior year grades, Dawson, but what they will look at is your senior year classes. So if you're trying to go to competitive college, they're going to look at your senior year classes. So if you've been taking a bunch of APs and stuff, and senior year, you don't take any, that it's going to be kind of a red flag for them. Okay, so again, senior year, you might have to keep up with the same rigor you were doing junior year. Now, again, you might, oh, I've had 3 years of math, so I'm UC eligible. I might take the AP psychology instead. That would be fine. That's still showing rigor because you're taking AP psychology, but now you're taking it in a class you like. Or if you maybe dropped an AP or 2 or something, and instead you're doing robotics or something like that. Brian, you want to head into data handling and software development. They should head for more math classes and computer science. Great question. You're going to want to take, yeah, for some stuff like that, you're going to, well, the computers, yes, math. But if you have a love for another subject, I wouldn't just shun that off. So it really depends on the kid. It's hard to just say that in a vacuum. So yeah, it depends. I mean, yes, take some math classes, but do you need to take every math class and not take, maybe you like music, and would you forego music? I don't know if I would do that, especially if that's a release for them. So again, it's got to be tempered with balance and allowing the kid to thrive. So yes, you're going to want to have more math classes potentially, or not necessarily in school, but maybe you do something out of school that shows that you're following computer science or something like that. So you need to back it up, not just in the classes, in some other things that you're doing. So, but it's just hard to give you that direct answer. But in a nutshell, what you probably end up doing is you'll need to take the subject test, which is in addition to the SAT or ACT, a subject test, and maybe math, possibly, depending on the major you end up picking. So there'll be some other additions that you might need to do based on that subject that you end up going into. Thoughts, weighted and unweighted GPA? I don't know what do you mean by thoughts on that? I'm not really sure. I mean, to me, it's, are you referencing my kids taking some competitive classes or hard classes, and so got a B and now I have an A, or again, every kid is going to be a difference. So I don't want to say, well, yeah, that matters or it doesn't matter. If there's a kid and he's doing fine in school and manages it well and is a happy and healthy kid and doesn't take a ton of APs, there's still going to be a college out there for that kid. If there's a kid that does a lot of AP classes, has a good GPA, and because they've taken so many, some of those classes aren't necessarily weighted, then so again, do colleges differentiate the AP level 5 grades? Can you get even more specific than that? I'm not sure the differentiation of that they got an A in the AP class or on the test, AP test. I mean, it sounds like, Mark, that your thing, I appreciate it, and you kind of wanting to know. I don't want you to get caught up in this. I have to do these classes. Like, I feel like it might be going that way, where it's like, oh, I'm so focused on that, and it kind of takes over, and you get lost in that AP and everything about grades, and you forget about some of the other things. So I want you to be careful on and not get caught up in that. And that's where maybe an appointment with a counselor, or taking a step back and making sure you're looking at everything the right way, and you're not overdoing APs, and you're so focused on, I'm only taking this class because I want to go to this school. Then sometimes you might be making some wrong decisions on that. Great, Brian. I'm glad you're on your path. So for you, Mark, again, it depends on your goals, some of your questions, so it's hard to answer that. Weighted or unweighted is really not going to matter if you're having a rigorous class schedule and you're trying to go to a competitive school. Colleges differentiate a lot of times on rigor and the classes you take, and that you back up what you say. So again, it's a holistic approach. So it's not just one little thing. It's not one particular instance. A lot of people think, well, shoot, I didn't take that AP computer science class, so I didn't get in. It doesn't always work with one class in particular. There's more to it than that. So I wouldn't get hung up on one thing. Or I got only a 32, so I didn't get into Cal Poly. It doesn't usually work that way. That's why I would recommend you come to the mock case study, Mark, which is coming out March 27th. I sent you that flyer. I would definitely come to that to kind of get a new perspective on how they look at students in that case, in the case studies. And then there'll be a bunch of 35 to 40 colleges. You can talk specifically to those schools and see what schools, how they look at some of those things a little differently. Okay, that would be the perfect place to do it. And there might be some schools you might be interested in. So that's what I would tell you. All right, folks, I'm going to sign off here. I appreciate your time. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully you're a little bit one step closer. There's still more work to be done, but I wish you the best of luck. Thanks and good night.